Hello fellow woodworkers and welcome to this week's edition of the Garage Workshop, and in this week's video we're going to be revisiting an earlier project and stage one of my router cabinet rebuild. Roll the intro. Okay, so the first thing to do was obviously dismantle my own unit, and as I was doing this it did make me realise there were more problems with it than I'd first thought, and one of them was that it actually had slightly bowed the router table. You can see it on the bench there behind me. So I started off by cutting up my MDF. I've got quite a few bits of MDF lying around the garage workshop, and some of them have been there literally since my channel started, or maybe even before. We'll come back to that a little bit later in the video. Now, rather than trying to cut a worktop out of a bigger piece, I decided on this method of using sort of slats put together, because it would be a lot more accurate in terms of the finished sort of product, and it allowed me to put some sort of guide rails in, which you'll see in a minute. So I cut all the wood down. I was incredibly careful, very precise as much as I could be, to get everything exactly the right size, and you can probably see that I'd had over measured a little bit, so I just took the ends off, and I was really happy with how it had laid out. So when I'd done that and I'd sort of got the edges in the back, I then went for a longer piece. Again, this is just 12mm MDF. I went for this longer piece, which was going to sort of hold it together at the back. You can just see me placing it on there. So that would sort of hold the two bits together, and obviously this whole top is going to be on top of a cabinet, so that was going to hold it down and keep the pressure down. And again, every single thing I'm doing here, I'm making sure it's properly squared and properly lined up. So when I did it, I then glued it. Now I have to say, this is the most amount of glue I think I've ever used on any project in the garage workshop ever. So I just went about filling it all in. As you can see, used quite a lot of glue. The weird thing about this, I'm not sure if I captured it on the actual film, is there was virtually no squeeze out at all. I don't know what that means, but none, absolutely none pretty much. So when I had a chance to put it down, I left some weights on the top of it and left it to sort of properly cure overnight. I did this on purpose because I could have get an hour or 2 hours, but for this I wanted to give it a proper time to dry, and luckily the weather wasn't too cold. It was a sort of milder day, so I didn't have to worry too much about the weather affecting the drying time. So I put a good old chunk of weight on it, including my vise, which you'll see me in a minute, just because it's one of the heaviest things, and then I left it overnight. Came back the next day and it had dried absolutely brilliantly. So then I went for these two sort of side reinforcement bits, and what you can see is there's a gap there between that sort of side reinforcement bit and the router table, and the reason is that's where I'm going to put the rails in, for a better word, that I'm going to use to support and fix the actual sort of router top on. So when I'd got those exactly the right size, I did brad nail them. I didn't glue them, and I didn't really think of it, to be honest. I just went straight for the brad nailer and just put something in. A little bit of a shout out to this brad nail gun. I'll put a link to it in the description. It's such a good tool, and it was really cheap, really good. That and my Hyundai compressor. So I put in quite a few brad nails, as you can see, but again there's no wood glue here, so I wanted to make sure it stuck really well. And as you can see there, the gap between that wood I'm nailing in and the actual top of the router table, the trend top. So when I got all that done and I was nice and happy with it, I just popped a few brads in, the bigger, longer bit, which you saw me gluing a minute ago. To be honest, I probably didn't need them, but I just wanted to do it anyway. So here I'm getting the distance between the MDF sort of side and the router unit, and this block of wood that I've got here is the one that I made the rails on. So how I did this, just really basic. I measured the gap up from the bottom so that when I cut it I had the right depth rail, as it were, and you'll see what I mean a bit more in a minute. But I had a longer piece than I needed because I wanted to leave, the reason I used such a big piece there is because I wanted to leave a little bit for a test piece, just to make sure that everything is working properly and everything is working as I wanted it to be. So when I got the right sort of depth, I marked it on, and then I took it over and ran it through the table saw. And the plan here was to use the table saw, run it through once to get the right depth, and then just randomly using the test strip, adjust the blade so that when it was on the other way, it was the right size. I realised that is an appalling piece of film as we just saw my back, but I'm basically running it through there, and that you'll also see there, I forgot to put the brake on the table saw trowel. So I did it one way and then I put it through the other way, and it effectively cut the groove, which was just the right size in the wood. Then I went to cut it on the miter saw to get it exactly the right size. And after I'd done that and I was happy with my two pieces of wood, I put them through the drill to sort of countersink and start the hole off. I didn't drill all the way through, this was just basically a hole to hide the screw effectively that I used. I have to say I'm massively in love with this Bosch drill. Again, I'll put a link to my review of this drill, but it is a fantastic drill, and the more I'm using it, the more I'm so glad that I invested the money in it. And it's not the cheapest drill in the market, don't get me wrong, but it's really good. So when I've done that, I then use my drill to sort of drill all the way through. You can see there the little rail, and I took my time doing this, but I did actually make a little bit of a mistake here. Some of these drills, drill bits, when I put them through, when I then went to screw the rail down, I think I over screwed, I misjudged the screw length, because some of them went all the way through the wood, but luckily it was only one, and I sort of put the top on it, and then I just adjusted to smaller screws. But I think that initial drill with the Bosch, I probably went a bit too deep. I probably should have only gone about 1 centimetre, and I went a bit more than that. So with that done, I just fixed it in. You can see that there. So this is drilling it and attaching it to the MDF frame. I'm not at this point attaching it to the actual trend table. I did that afterwards, and I think you'll see it in a minute. I know my camera cut out at one point. I can't remember what it was, but it was also at this point that I realised how buckled the trend top had become. It was about a millimetre and a half probably out on the back right hand corner, and I think that's where it had been in that cabinet, and it wasn't properly seated in there. I think what I'd done is screwed into it to level it up and sort of buckled it out of shape. But I am pleased to say that when I'd screwed this in, it had gone back to shape, so I'd sort of redone it the other way and corrected what I'd done in the first place. But these things happen, you know. I wasn't to know when I built that cabinet that it was on the wonk. You only sort of find those things out when you take it apart. But I took my time doing this, and the reason being, obviously I wanted to make sure everything was 100% straight, because with a router table you got to get it straight. It's the most important thing. And as you can see there, very pleased to say it is absolutely perfectly flush with the top. Now here I'm just marking the sort of where the fence goes. Now in another video when I'm finishing this off, I'm going to actually try and extend that fence out, but more on that in video number 2. So when I'd done that and I was happy with it, which I was, I then went on to the second stage, which was making the base. Now this is the, I think it's 22 or 24 mil MDF. This is the MDF that I bought for another project, which will, again, is going to be an upcoming video. And I just wanted to use this big, heavy, substantial piece of MDF on the bottom of the unit. And the reason, obviously, why I wanted to do that is A, to give it strength and stability, and also B, to give it a little bit of weight, because one of the biggest problems with my the trend setup as I had it before was I'd made the cabinet completely out of plywood, 18mm plywood I think it was, and it was just too lightweight, and that's why I ended up putting a load of my saws and stuff in the bottom of it to try and give it a bit of weight. And also it was too small. The cabinet's width was pretty much the width of the trend frame, and it just wasn't wide enough. It was too narrow and too easy to sort of push over, if you see what I mean. There wasn't enough space. And I also found when I was running wood through the router table, I needed a little bit more space either side, which I just didn't have. So when I got it all marked out, I got out my parkside plunge saw and I just took the plunge saw through it. Now, unbeknownst to me, there were a couple of quite big sort of burn marks in the wood. You'll see in a minute. Not quite sure why, to be honest, because as you saw from that, I didn't have any issues going through it really, but it did leave a couple of sort of bigger marks on it. So now I'm just offering up the top and the bottom just to make sure they're exactly the same size, which they are. But you can see there, look, the wood, you can see the sort of burn mark from the blade on the wood, and I do actually leave that in. That's something that I will adjust in the second video. So with that done, it was now time to work on the sides, and I went for a sort of different way of doing this. I didn't want to go for one whole open side. I went for two sort of very similar sized sort of uprights. At first I was going to leave a gap in them so that the dust and everything could blow out of them, but I have to say I did change my mind on that, because having sort of offered it up, I didn't like the way it looked, and I hadn't cut the wood by then, so I decided not to. I literally just went with sort of two sides, but two separate pieces, and you'll see at the end I was actually really pleased with how it worked out. So again, a lot more measuring, probably more measuring in this project than I've done for a very long time. I'm not going to lie, I wanted to get everything precise, and it has taken me quite a long time to do this. This build that you'll see stretches over about 2 weeks, and that's mostly working in the evenings, a couple of hours every night, and maybe 2 or 3 hours at a weekend. Next thing was pocket holes. Now this is where I made my intergalactic disaster, and those keen-eyed, eagle-eyed of you will see in a minute, or may pick up on what the issue was. So I took my pocket hole thing out, I used it. I'd used it the last time on an 18mm piece of plywood. This is an 18mm piece of MDF. Hadn't changed it, put it back in the box, put the box on the side, got it straight out and used it again, and I didn't check it. And that is where I sort of come a cropper, which you'll see in a minute. But when I was editing this video and putting it together, I noticed here there was a telltale sign that I'd made a mistake, and if you're eagle-eyed you'll catch it. Just in the dust there you'll see a piece of blue plastic there, if you can see it. Now that blue plastic is there because when I was drilling the pocket holes I went through the plastic on the bottom of the pocket hole jig, and the reason why I went through the plastic was the pocket hole jig wasn't for the right set to the right height, which I'll talk about in a minute. When I'd done that, I offered up my ship hack. This is one of the other things that I wanted to change about this new build. Before I had the the shop vac somewhere separately, and that just did not work. So I want a sort of onboard system. So when I built this, I specifically designed it so that I could fit the ship vac in there. And the other thing is it's got more ventilation than where it currently is as well. So it'll go in the sort of back. I was just marking where it is so I could sort of lay the rest of the sides out, and also make sure, because this is a typical garage workshop mistake I would have made, making sure that the top of the vac, which is quite top, it's got a big like dome top, it looks a bit like an alternative world R2D2, just making sure that with the router it wasn't going to bash into the ship vac hoover when I was adjusting the height up and down. So next thing to do was I literally was just cutting all of these to length. I put a stop block in, you can see that, just a really basic stop block to make sure they're all the right size. And obviously they were just a little bit bigger than the capacity of my miter saw, so the stop block made sure everything was okay. Now here, I merrily started putting in the pocket hole screws, and this is where I realised how much of a cropper I had come. You can see me here, I'm trying different sizes of screws, and I don't seem to understand what the issue is, but you can tell from the way I'm doing it, it's very tentative, that I'm just feeling something just doesn't feel right here. And I was looking at it and I just could not put my finger on it. But those of you who are experienced woodworkers and experienced pocket holers might see what the problem is here. But I have to say, when I was actually putting the pocket hole screws in, I was at a complete and utter loss about, you know, what was going on. I was very, very confused, I have to say. Okay, so fellow woodworkers, it wasn't long before I encountered a problem or made a mistake. And what I've done, I used my other pocket hole jig. You will have just seen me use it. Now, the last time I used it, it was all completely set up for 18mm plywood, so it was all the right depths, the drilling, everything was the right depth. But I've just gone to put this on, as you'll have seen in the video, and the holes are too deep for the screw. Even the smallest screw, which is 25mm, is going all the way through and going all the way through the MDF on the bottom, bearing in mind the MDF on the bottom is quite thick. So I've just looked again, and these holes that I have drilled are actually a lot bigger than they need to be. They actually fit a 50mm pocket hole. Now obviously if I use a 50mm pocket hole, I'm going to have screws coming way beyond what I need them to be. And I've done a lot. I've done 20 of these pocket holes and they're all wrong. So my only choice, because I haven't got enough wood to pick new wood, my only choice now is to do the pocket holes on the other side, which is going to leave these pocket holes exposed. So I've got a plan for how I'm going to fix them. I'm probably just going to wood fill them, or I might cover the whole thing in a thin layer of plywood, or I've got some very, very thin MDF that I could use. But these things happen. As I said, I left it set up exactly as it needed to. My mistake was I didn't check it when I got out, and it must have got banged, or when I set it up I must have made a mistake that I didn't realise, because now all my pocket holes are incorrect. So I'm not going to make you sit through me pocket holing everything again. We'll just jump to when it's done and I'll fix it onto the board. So the greatest thing about YouTube is you don't have to watch my mistakes, which I'm very thankful for. So after that, I was able to redo all the pocket holes, and due to the magic of YouTube, I was then able to fix it back on, and I was much happier with how it felt this time. So now I was confident that it was working, I moved on to the next stage, which was obviously fixing the other side. And again, didn't have any issues at all with that, so I was very pleased with how the other side had worked. the next thing I did was fix the two sides together. So to do this, I literally ran it through the table saw first of all to make sure that I'd got the right size so that they matched and didn't go off the end. And then when I put them through the table saw, I fixed them together. So again, I'd already used pocket holes for this, so it was just a case of putting a seam of glue down the side and then pocket holding them in, which worked really, really well, I have to say. Pleased with how that turned out. I should also say, you know, I do realise this is quite an unusual way of doing this, but it actually worked out really well. Obviously, I've got these really big clamps, which does help. And I have got two sets of clamps, but these Parkside ones that I use for this are really good because they're quite light. My sash clamps are quite heavy and they wouldn't have sort of hung in the air and allowed me to fix it very well. So I was pleased with that, and obviously pleased with the join, the final sort of join. Again, didn't get much wood glue spill out on this, which I was really surprised about, but they're nice and straight. I popped a spirit level on the back and they're exactly in line with each other, which is really all you can ask for at the end of the day. So with all of the sides on, I could then go and offer up the top and see whether all my measurements had worked and whether it all fitted properly. So I was really careful when I offered this up. I was a bit worried that some of my measurements had sort of gone astray and it wasn't going to be the right fit. It was, I was very pleased to say. Now, fixing this, I did consider a couple of different ways of doing this. This is actually quite an awkward thing to do, and what I had thought about was laying the top upside down and then putting this bit sort of, you know, turn it upside down, so I was sort of fixing in the same way that I'd fixed when I attached the bottom, but I decided against that. So I literally just rested the top, I picked a point, got it level, and then I went around and fixed all the screws on it like that. The other really important thing that I should mention here, which I don't think I have, is I decided to pull the left-hand wall in a bit to give me a sort of ledge on the side. We'll come back to that in the second video, but when I fixed it on, I'd used some of the right angle clamps and I'd put my trusty right angled square on it, and I was amazed to find it was completely square. It was exactly in line. There weren't any issues. It fitted really, really nicely, which, you know, for a garage workshop project, I am taking that as a big win. And again, I was very careful with how I fixed the pocket hole screws here, just in case I'd made a mistake. I didn't want the screws coming up through the wood, which obviously you don't want, because apart from the fact, you know, it's very annoying, you're obviously going to damage the surface of the wood on the main side, the plain side, planing sort of side, as it were. And with all of that done, I was very, very pleased to say it was time to move on to the next section. And I've got a really interesting piece of footage here to show you, which I didn't actually realise at the time. It was only when I was making this video that I saw this in real time, and you'll see it yourself in a minute. So I cut up some of the offcuts of MDF to make a sort of structure to fix the power on and off button too. Very similar to what I did the first time round. Just cut some wood, pocket hold it so I could fix it to the top of the cabinet, and then I just fixed the power button to it. And in the second video, I'm going to go around with a sort of face frame to sort of cover this in a little bit more. But when I did this, it was one of the oldest pieces of wood, MDF, that I'd had in the garage workshop. And as I mentioned, and I'll mention it again at the end, there is a little bit of an issue with some of that wood, which obviously I wasn't aware of at the time. But as I said, in this clip that's coming up, you're going to see exactly what I mean. And I actually didn't see this, but it does explain something that happened later on. So here you will see when I put that pocket screw in, it completely splits that piece of MDF. Now, like I said, it wasn't until I started editing this video that I saw that, but that was a problem that plagued me throughout the build. Happened in a couple of places, and I was managed to save it with wood glue, but I didn't here. And later on, and this wasn't caught on camera because it was in between filming, this actual unit fell off of the, it just literally fell back in to the cabinet. The pocket hole screw had sort of pulled through, so I had to readjust it and put it back on, all because of that MDF. Obviously, had I seen that, I would have done something about it. The next thing I did, I just took some measurements for the stretchers to stop it, keep it in line, stop it sort of falling apart. And interestingly, the measurement was 51 centimetres on the bottom and 51.2 centimetres on the top. So it was 2 mil out effectively. So I got this piece of wood cut down to size, and then I ran it through my table saw to get 3 sort of battens that were all exactly the same width and the same length. I only actually fixed 2 of them. I've still got one of them which is going to appear in the second video, but yet again just making sure that everything was there. And I did mention a sort of 2mm gap, so when I fixed the top stretcher I just put a clamp on and that sort of pulled it together. And again, as you can see, just fixed with pocket holes. You'll also see, I hope you can see in this video, when I do the one that screws it to sort of the base, that MDF blew out a little bit there as well. Only a little bit, but just enough. But the funny thing is, you can sort of hear it. I could hear sort of creaking where the fibres in the MDF were splitting, which, to be honest, isn't great. But you can't really tell too much, and it stopped making noise now. The last stage of the build was literally just fixing on the router, putting the router back to where it was, just making sure that it fitted, which thankfully it did, and it was finished. And I have to say, I'm really pleased with how the final thing turned out. And as you'll see, yeah, not the greatest looking thing, but functional, and a lot of the issues we're going to sort out in the second video, which should be coming in the next couple of weeks. So, fellow woodworkers, I've come to the end of this stage of the project. The first part of the project was just to actually create the sort of carcass of the router table, which, as you can see, I've now done. I've reinstalled the router. I've put back in the power switch. So in this video, the plan was to get... No, that's shite. So, fellow woodworkers, stage 1 of my redevelopment of my router cabinet is finished. I've installed the power button on the side there, and I've actually put the router back in. Everything with the stretches all finished now, but as you can see, it does look very unattractive. But in the second video, I'm going to be addressing that and also working on some storage and tidying up bits like this where it doesn't look great. That was the cutting mark when I used the saw. So overall, some real positives. It's exactly as I wanted it to be. Everything fits in. My dust extractor, my ship axe, it fits in there. It fits in with the router. There's no issues there. So everything is exactly as I wanted it to be at this stage. But one big issue that I didn't counter on, and this is your opportunity to let me know in the comments whether you've experienced something like this. The MDF that I've had, some of the MDF that I've used here has been in the garage for at least 18 months, probably over 2 years. And I've had a lot of issues with the older bits of MDF literally just splitting when I've been using the pocket hole screws. I've never had that before, but as I was putting some of them in, even though they weren't splitting, you could sort of hear it splitting internally, a bit like the noise you get when you put milk on your Rice Krispies. It was a bit disconcerting. So in some places I have got some splits, but for example, the wood here split and the wood here split, and as soon as I saw the split, I just put some wood glue in it and put a clamp on it, and it's managed to close it back up. This one at the bottom is a little bit messier because it sort of popped out as I was screwing in, but That I'm not going to worry about, because all of the issues around how it looks I can fix. It's absolutely perfectly flat on the top, which is really fantastic, and it's all ready for stage 2, which hopefully will be in next week's video. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you're new to the channel, please can I ask you to subscribe, like, comment, hit the notification bell. If you're a regular viewer, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and comment, particularly around that issue with the MDF if you've had the same thing. I will catch you on the next edition of the Garage Workshop. Take care, fellow woodworkers.